Hello, I'm Anawiltus, and today I'm going to take a political test at isidewith.com. Uh, I guess 46 million voters used iSidewith to find their candidate match. So I guess this is going to be going back to the 2016 election. But the reason I'm doing this is because I thought, well, this might be an interesting way for me to uh, get to discuss politics. So that should be interesting. Okay, so let's take a look at everything here. Should the U.S. assassinate suspect terrorists in foreign countries? Uh, let's see. Only if there is an undeniable evidence that they have committed an attack against our country. If someone has attacked your country, I suppose it would be good to kill them, because then it's like a micro war in a sense, where somebody wants to destroy your country, but you have to destroy them before they destroy you. Planning to attack. You know what? Fair trial. Fair is really a relative thing, where what some people consider fair is not what other people consider fair. So, yeah, I would have to get some more clarification on that. So my stance is, if somebody's attacking your country, of course you should always fight back. But the term assassinate itself is putting me off a bit, because I don't think people should lie. I'm not very pragmatic about this. I think that people shouldn't lie in the first place. So if you're going to do something through deception, then how about this? I think that's a better stance to take. That we shouldn't just do something through deception, but rather go all in and get it done. And then nobody can say we mistreated them, because wait, suspected terrorists. Okay. Now it's because it's suspected. Now I want to say the second part of this, but also this as well. This one is good as well, in the sense that you want to capture people that have actually done something. There's more stances. Yes, but only if they're planning on attacking our country. No, let the country they are residing in take care of it. I'd only say you could do it if they had a bad history, or if you have seen that they have done terrorist-like things back then it is fine. No, we have no right to kidnap or assassinate the citizens of a sovereign nation. Yeah, you do need extradition. Now, of course, if that nation is supporting the terrorists, then that's an entirely different matter. And then you really get into the nitty-gritty of foreign politics there. Take the suspected terrorists and interrogate them. Only if they're a threat to the country, just capture them. Confirmed terrorists only. I think that's a bit better. Known terrorists. Okay, I'm going to write my own. I'm going to combine these two. Add my own stance. Okay. No. Only... Okay. Terrorists. Okay. Oops. Plural. Should... Okay. only confirmed terrorists should be captured and put on trial, but not assassinated. I think that's a fair stance, where you have to confirm that they are actually terrorists before you can make an arrest. And you also have to... Now, of course, if somebody's walking through and they've got a suicide vest attached, of course you're going to arrest them. Because even if they're not planning on doing anything with it, which is highly unlikely, you should still be really worried about that. Okay, enter. Okay, I don't need to put enter on that. Okay, and that's all on national security. Wow. Okay. Social issues. Stance on abortion. Let's take a look. Pro-life, but allowing... I'm heavily pro-life, and it all depends on whether or not you view the fetus as being a human life, and whether or not that life is valuable from its very beginning. And if you disagree with that, then of course you're going to be pro-choice at some point. But I personally do agree with saying that it is a human life at conception, and that life has value from conception all the way till death. So, yeah. Because let's be honest, incest, I heavily discourage it. Don't do incest because it's a genetically bad idea to do. But I'm not going to stop you if you're going to. And rape is wrong in all circumstances, but you can't punish another life that wasn't involved to begin with. You can't punish somebody else for a person's crimes. Punish the rapist, not the child, okay? And that's my stance. Now, if you agree with that, then that's fine. But if you disagree with that, then I suppose you have your own stance on that. But that's just my view. If I view these people as being both alive and valuable, then abortion is one of the worst things in the world. It's almost a genocide from that perspective. Okay. Should the government continue to fund Planned Parenthood? No. Yeah, that's good. Stop funding anything, okay? These things are private companies. The government shouldn't go around funding private companies. In addition to that, the Planned Parenthood deal, it's not only a private company that's doing all these things. You might say, well, it's sort of charitable, but it has false advertising and misleading practices and is immensely corrupt. And that's not even getting into the moral dilemma of abortions on the pro-life, pro-choice thing. I'm just looking at them, and they say that they have services that they don't actually offer in most places. So they're dishonest in that manner. There's that whole deal with selling the body parts of aborted fetuses, which is problematic as well. So no, don't fund people like that. They're very, let's say, very corrupt. So I'm not going to go for that. Okay, same-sex marriage. Take the government out of marriage. That's my idea. Now, the reason the government goes with the marriage contracts, or at least the US government does in the first place, is because it actually started out as a sort of Jim Crow law where they wanted to prevent interracial marriage, and that's why people had to have a marriage license to get married. However, nowadays, times change. Let's get rid of these laws, all right? And just so that you know, I personally do not approve of homosexuality, but I'm not going to stop you if you're going to get married. Just don't involve me in your homosexuality. Okay. Environmental issues. Should the government increase regulation to prevent climate change? I have to agree with that. I have looked at the science, and not only the science, but also the scientists. And the science points to the fact that human activity really has not affected global warming as much as some government-funded scientists say it has. In addition to that, not only do these people say that this has happened, which is one issue, another issue is that these people themselves are really corrupt. And how do I know they're corrupt? Because I know that because they repeatedly offer misleading information. For example, there was a graph one time, and the graph was tilted slightly. You'd have to really measure the pixels on your computer screen to tell that. I'm not going to show it here. But they intentionally tilted the graph on a website so that it looked like the temperature had increased more than it actually had. And there's tons of other examples on this, but I'm not really going to go into that because that's not really something that I want to do at the moment. Should the government stop construction of Dakota Access Pipeline? No, because they can do what they want. You know? Wait a second. Let's actually see. Dakota Access Pipeline, South Dakota, Iowa, Illinois oil companies, Eastern Seaboard, was permitted by state governments under eminent domain. But since they already have taken the land, then I guess my opposition to eminent domain doesn't really matter. Native American burial sites. I say no simply because I think that if they want to get their oil, they can do it. Capitalism all the way, yeah. And in addition to that, the eminent domain bothers me a bit, though. But it's already been done, so it's already happened. Hydraulic fracking. Not in heavily polluted areas. Research, sustainable. The thing about other energy sources is that besides hydro and nuclear, those are the only good ones out there. You've got solar, which is very area inefficient. You have to have huge solar farms if you want to even compare to fossil fuels. So I think we've got the resources, so we should use them. Sure, fine. I'd do that. Government raise minimum wage. I sort of agree with this stance here, that it will cause the prices to increase in a never-ending cycle. Because if you raise the minimum wage, all it really does is it it makes it harder for businesses to run, because then they'll have to pay people more, which means they'll pass the buck to the consumer, which causes, because the rich people that are on top of the big corporations, they don't want to lose money. So what they'll do is they'll raise the prices on their goods to the consumers. So who loses out in the end? It's the consumers. And then the consumers, the regular people, their money will be running short. So in other words, it completely removes the point of having increased the minimum wage, because now goods are more expensive, and overall the money that you have is worth less, and in the end you're paying the same amount. Age group, experience, inflation. No. I actually think that getting rid of minimum wage, although it sounds a bit counterintuitive, would probably help the economy, in the sense that it would mean that businesses can stop overpaying people who don't deserve to be paid that much, and can instead pay more to other people that really do deserve it. But of course, this is a very shaky position, in the sense that it really is on a case-by-case basis for each person, and each business really has to make that decision. I just think the government shouldn't be involved in this in the first place. Welfare recipients be tested for drugs. There you go. Fix the problem. I'm really against the social welfare programs. I don't think it's the government's business to do these things. It should really be privatized, not in the sense that we let the corporations take over all of this, because then they'll just be in it for the money, but rather that each citizen should have a moral responsibility, not a legal responsibility, to care for each other. And I think that would produce a better society. Okay. Should government make cuts to public spending in order to reduce the national... Let's take a look. I really like this one. And eliminate federal agencies that are unconstitutional. Because in the U.S. Constitution, it gives the national government certain powers, the so-called enumerated powers, and then all other powers are devolved to the states. However, people have used a couple of clauses, one of them known as the elastic clause in the Constitution, to really say that, oh, well, the government can actually do anything it wants, even though the Constitution doesn't explicitly tell them that it can. And as such, we've got a lot of stuff going on that really shouldn't be going on. Benefits, government officials. I think this is the best one, for me anyway. Should there be restrictions on the current process of purchasing a gun? Assault weapons is a really vague term. You might say assault rifles, but then that's oddly specific, because then that doesn't include things like bazookas and stuff. And honestly, I think you should, if you want to, you should have a battleship, if you really want to. If you can afford to pay for a battleship, go ahead, have a battleship. The problem with criminals and the mentally ill is that this infringes on people's constitutional right. Now, of course, that being said, if you're in prison, then you shouldn't be having a gun, because people that are in prison, their rights are slightly different from people that aren't. But if somebody says, oh, you have depression, therefore you can't have a gun, and maybe you've only got mild depression and it barely bothers you, then it really takes away your rights. All you need is a psychologist diagnosing you as mentally ill, or someone high up deciding to change some definitions as to what constitutes mental illness, and suddenly your rights are taken away. I think this is actually good because, let's be honest, why do people have guns in the United States? Well, some people like to hunt, some people like marksmanship, but the real reason is for self-defense. And not simply personal self-defense, but also defense from foreign invaders and from the government. And some people from other countries might find this a bit strange, but this is something that is historically ingrained in the United States, in the sense that the Battle of Lexington and the Battle of Concord were in fact over this very issue, where the British government was confiscating or attempting to confiscate weapons that the colonists had stockpiled. So they decided to defend themselves. And we look at history and we see the Nazis, the Soviets, various communist regimes and dictatorships around the world. What do? They outlaw people from having weapons. And not only guns in the modern age, but also in previous eras, some places they outlawed swords and other things. And the reason for that is so that they can have all the power. Once the government has all the power, then the will of the people doesn't matter, because the government can just take whatever they want. And in addition to that, people having guns actually reduces crime in some societies. For example, we look at Switzerland, pretty low crime rate compared to some other countries. And there's a lot of people in Switzerland that have guns. Or in the United States, there's a town where there was a legal mandate that everyone should own a gun. In effect, they made a law that made it mandatory for people to have guns. And you know what happened to the crime rate? It dropped like a stone. Because criminals, when they attack, they make a risk assessment. Because they don't want to die unless they're a suicide criminal. They want to get in, maybe steal something, or take whatever they want and get out with minimal risk to their lives. And because of that, if you know that the person that you're about to rob likely has a lethal weapon, then that really discourages you from robbing people. And that is the logic of the pro-gun position, which I adhere to. Now, if you have a different perspective on this, then I'd love to hear it. None of these things that I'm saying here are really set in stone for me, because I can change my mind on these things. I just think that these positions that I'm currently taking are based on what I know to be the best positions for where I want society to go. Now, of course, you might have a different opinion, or you might know something that I don't know. And in that case, I'd love for you to comment and maybe educate me. And then I can talk to you and we can have a discourse and understand each other, rather than have a political hate fest, which some people enjoy doing, but I'm not one of those people. Okay, should local police increase surveillance and patrol of Muslim neighborhoods? No way. I would have put this, judging by unconstitutional, but then it said racist, and let's be honest, Muslim is not a race. It really isn't. And okay, increase police surveillance in neighborhoods that have more crime. That's even better. Because let's be honest, not all Muslims go around killing people and raping people and doing these things. Now, that being said, in some cultures that are predominantly Muslim, these things are a bit more common than in some other cultures. But that doesn't mean that everyone automatically does these things. This should be based on the actual crime rates and what actually is happening rather than what some people think might happen. And that is how I think about it. It's all about what is happening. What did these people say? Not what do you think is going to happen, or what do you presume that this person is going to do. It should rather be on what you know, rather your decisions should be based on what you know rather than on what you don't know, is what I'm trying to say. A bit philosophical there. Do you support affirmative action programs? No. And by the way, this one is really off topic. Are you kidding me, lads? Whoever wrote this, please stop. Poverty and affirmative action aren't directly linked as issues. Of course, there's some overlaps on many issues, but this is not one of them. Do you support Patient Protection and Affordable Care Act? What is Patient Protection, actually? I probably should know this. Affordable Care Act, sweeping overhaul, okay. Significant, I don't like that. I know what Affordable Care Act is. I've done people's taxes, so it really is a pain from a tax perspective. Because you look at the Affordable Care Act, and what do you see? I talk to people that are experts in taxes, legal experts, experts in the medical field. And no, I'm not making this up. I'm actually talking to these people. I'm not like one of those people that says, oh, I talk to these people. But I actually know people that are experts in all these fields, and I have talked to them. And you know what they all tell me? The poorest people can't afford Obamacare. In other words, Obamacare, in its effort to get everybody insured, has failed. In addition to that, some companies are suffering because of Obamacare. Some health insurance corporations are really making the big bucks because they're in with Obamacare, and the doctors don't want to do procedures on people that have Obamacare because they know that they might not get paid. And, you know, being a doctor is expensive. It isn't all about the skill. It also has to do with equipment, and you have to get a lot of disposable things. And you look at hospitals. People go to the hospital, and if the hospital doesn't get paid, it means that the money that the hospital should have been paid is instead passed on to everybody else that can pay, which makes hospital bills really expensive. So the reason hospital bills are so expensive is because there are so many people that can't actually pay their bills. So, in other words, it's a complete failure, Obamacare. There. Just get government out of healthcare, privatize it, and we'll see how it works. Because if it's privatized, then the companies will compete to offer people a better quality plan at a lower price. And that is what you really want in practically anything economically. Better quality for lower price. And that is the advantage of competition in the market. Legalization of marijuana. This is actually an issue that I've really been on the fence on, because marijuana is one of those things where some people say it's not bad for you, but I've seen studies that say that it affects the reproductive systems, in the sense that if you smoke a lot of weed, if you're a man, your sperm will go bad. Of course, it eventually recycles and gets good again. But if you're a woman, it goes right into your eggs, and that means that you might have a lot of birth defects if you ever have children. And in addition to that, it could even make you infertile as a woman. But so it's not a safe drug. in the sense that there aren't any side effects. There are some significant side effects relating especially to reproduction. And of course, we look at societies where people smoke a lot of marijuana, and you know what? They get a bit lazier. That's also a problem from an economic perspective. And of course, similar problems as with smoking, in the sense that it messes with your lungs if you decide to smoke it. So I think legalize, tax and regulate instead of criminalizing it. This is one of those, and I'm saying that I'm on the fence about this because on one side I'm thinking freedom, people should have the freedom to do all these things, but on the other side I'm thinking, well, it isn't really that good, and does it actually help society? But you might say, well, look at Portugal, where they legalized, well, not they legalized, they decriminalized a lot of these drugs, and you see that it has actually meant that people can get help if they have a problem. On the other hand, in at least where I live, the actual consumption of marijuana is not a crime, but rather the possession and trade of it, in the sense that if you smoked weed and you go someplace to get treatment for it, you're not going to get arrested because you smoked weed. But if you are a weed dealer or you've got a stash, then you can get arrested because you actually have the weed. So I'm really on the fence about this. You know? I don't know. I really don't know. You know, I don't have all the answers. Should the government regulate the prices of life-saving drugs? Oh, wait, I have a better idea. Each state should decide. There you go, that's constitutional. Which means just remove the federal laws on it and let each state decide on whether or not they want to deal with it or not. That's the constitutional thing, because that's actually what the United States Constitution has, in which the states have the ability to make all these different laws on a huge number of issues, on practically any issue, except for ones that violate the federal law. Should the government regulate the prices of life-saving drugs? No. That's not a... I don't think that's really going to do too much. Never regulate prices on private businesses. That's my position. I think that the less you regulate the businesses, the more flexible they become, and also the more competitive they can be. So you look at people like Rockefeller, who had a petroleum monopoly, but the way he got the petroleum monopoly was by selling petroleum at a cheaper price than everybody else. And that is what we want. That is what I want, at least. Not necessarily a monopoly, but rather that people compete to the point where things get at their highest quality to their lowest price possible. And that's the best thing. And I also know that a lot of these drugs, they cost a lot of money to make. I actually know someone who is involved in biochemistry, and for every drug that comes out and is used, there are many that are failed. Now, that being said, I also think that some drugs shouldn't be regulated, in the sense that there's some drugs that can cure colds. You can cure the flu with drugs. There's a cure, but in the United States, at least, it's one of those things where it doesn't really, it's not legal, or at least it wasn't legal because the the federal government decided that they were going to regulate stuff. Or for one of the two types of diabetes, I forget which one, there is a cure, but people don't have it because not only is the government regulating these things, but when the government regulates drugs, it also puts another problem on the table, because if the government has the power to regulate this, then the government also has the possibility of becoming corrupt on this issue, in the sense that you've got lobbyists paying money from certain pharmaceutical companies so that other drugs are banned, so that they can sell their own drugs that might not solve the problem but only treat the symptoms, which creates a long-term dependency on those drugs rather than a short-term, you take the drug, you're cured, you're done. And that's at least my position on that. Should convicted felons have the right to vote? Yes, every citizen, of course, of appropriate age, but I think that's implied relatively, should have a right to vote. Police officers be required to wear body cameras. Oh, and on every citizen having the right to vote, I also would like to say that not every citizen should be mandated to vote. Not everyone should be obligated to vote, because what if you don't know? What if you aren't informed? Then you're voting and making an uninformed decision. So I'm going to tell you right now, if you're uninformed and you're thinking about voting, get informed or don't vote. Because if you vote but you're uninformed, then you've essentially made a foolish decision. Even if your vote turns out to be for someone that goes for what you actually wanted and makes the country a better place, it's still not a very wise decision. Be wise, folks. Be wise. Should police officers be required to wear body cameras? No. That's even better. They can if they want to. We shouldn't make people do that, because you know how much that is going to cost? That's going to cost a lot. And police officers don't earn that much money. I know that because I know this police officer and his family, and you know what? They've got bad teeth. Why do they have bad teeth? Because they're not making that much money, and they can't afford to have great-looking teeth. So it's not easy for police officers. It's a tough life. Should prisons ban the use of solitary confinement for juveniles? Yeah. I think they should, and the reason why is because you look at solitary confinement. What does that do? It never has a positive psychological effect on people, because people are meant to be social. People are meant to communicate, and putting them in a situation that really removes that, it's very bad psychologically. And you look at infants. And with infants, there's something called failure to thrive, wherein an infant will die if it has no social interaction at all. And that's terrible. And, you know, you don't want to do that to an infant. Don't do it to an adult either. I think there should be a focus on rehabilitation, but also there should be a focus on harnessing the United States prison population, which is very large relative to some other countries, to actually get work done. Because I'm going to tell you right now, moving a rock around a prison yard or smashing rocks, that's not work, okay? Actually get something done, something to boost the economy. And otherwise, these people are just sitting around, and what are they doing? They're not doing anything. They're wasting their lives in a prison, maybe 20, 40 years, and they produce nothing. And instead, my tax money goes to those people to sit around. And I don't want that. I want them to be rehabilitated and to contribute to the economy in some way. Do you support increasing taxes for the rich in order to reduce interest taxes for student loans? Increasing taxes for the rich? No. No, because you know what happens when you increase taxes for the rich? They increase the cost of goods and services for everyone else. In other words, they don't pay for that. They're rich. They're not going to pay for this. They're going to look at everybody else and they're going to say, I'm not going to pay for this. You're going to pay for this. And you know what? That's not something that I want to happen. All current government student loans into privately managed accounts. I think that's something Bernie Sanders was talking about or something. I don't know what the privately managed account is exactly. It sounds like they're privatizing something, but I don't know exactly what. In that case, since I don't know what that is exactly, I'm just going, oops, no, go back. I'm just going to put a no on that. Do you support Common Core national standards? No, never. It's dumb. State and local level instead of a national level. You know why? Because that creates competition. And also it allows states to assess how much money they should be paying into their education programs, because you know what? Sometimes some states might require more money for various reasons, such as geography or other things, or the societies in each state are different. So putting a one-size-fits-all education in there doesn't really help. Also, Common Core is really supported by a lot of big corporations that want to essentially tailor-make students to join their corporation at the end. Okay. And these are also valid arguments. What if your state has better standards than the Common Core? Then you're going down a step. And uniform testing. The problem with uniform testing is that not everybody does well in tests. Some people are better in group environments. Some people are better on in classroom learning. I've always been good on tests, but I'm going to share a secret with you. For part of my educational career, I rarely did homework, simply because I thought I'll just ace the tests. And you know what? My grades were bad at that point, but it got better later on as I decided to actually do some stuff. Okay. This will disadvantage those who do not have... Okay. Should a photo ID be required to vote? Sure, yeah. And it helps prevent voter fraud. We don't want anybody voting that isn't allowed to vote, such as an illegal immigrant or another non-citizen, because that means that they're going in and they're making decisions for your country without actually being from your country, and that's problematic. In addition, it's a similar example would be, what if the people from Mexico went over and voted in the U.S. elections without being citizens? Then what if people from the U.S. went over and voted in Mexican elections without being citizens? It's a foreign interference with the democratic process, and you know what? I don't approve of that. Should foreigners currently residing in the United States have the right to vote? Anyone who pays taxes. Now, I'm actually a tax professional, and I know that any foreigner that is earning money in the United States, whether they're a citizen or not, pays taxes. And because of that, I know that paying taxes isn't really a basis on whether someone is a citizen or not. So I'm going to say no, only legal citizens should be allowed to vote. Now, that being said, if you are a foreign-born person that then moves to the U.S. and becomes a citizen, or a foreign-born U.S. citizen, then sure, that's fine. Should foreign lobbyists be allowed to raise money for American elections? Now, the thing about election fundraising is that you've got people like George Soros, who personally I don't approve of his stances on a number of issues or on the activities and choices that he has made in the past, but he pumps in a lot of money to a lot of various things, and I don't like that. But that being said, should these things be regulated by the government? Foreign interests should not be able to buy influence over politicians. Public knowledge, sure. I think that's a great middle ground. You can raise money, but if your money goes there, then everybody should be able to know about it. Okay. Now, of course, they're going to find some way to launder the money into there that bypasses this idea. So that's a problem as well. And I'm not saying that. Never mind. Let me go to the next point. Should foreign terrorism suspects be given constitutional rights? If they're foreign, then they're not citizens, and therefore they do not have rights. That is simply true, and you don't have the same rights if you are not a citizen. Should the U.S. accept refugees from Syria? There you go, extreme vetting. I think that's a great middle ground where, sure, you can come in, but we have to make sure that if you're coming in, that you're at least somebody that should be coming in and not some strange person, such as, why are there so many single men coming in? That is a big question. Should the government increase or decrease military spending? This is actually a big question. I don't really see the need to increase it because it's already a lot of money, but I don't think decreasing it is a good idea either. So I think staying at where we are is fine. Immigration issues. Should immigrants be deported if they have committed serious crimes? Only if they have entered the country illegally. If they are here legally and they commit a serious crime, then they can be tried inside the country because that's where they committed the crime. Punish them and then put them away. As long as it is safe for them to return to their country. For example, what if an illegal immigrant from Somalia attacks and you send them back to Somalia? How are they going to get to Somalia? What part of Somalia? Somalia is in pieces. I don't know what to do with that. Finish serving their sentence. Entered illegally? Let's take a look at some other stances. Okay. Sure. You can... If they have committed a crime, we need to deal with the crime first and then deal with their illegal status as well, since that is also a crime. That is why it's called illegal, because it's a crime. Maybe somebody could put the extreme position of calling illegal immigrants criminal immigrants, because that is essentially what it is. It's a crime where somebody disrespects the borders of your country and they go in. That's not a good way to run a country, to be honest. Illegal immigrants have access to government subsidized healthcare. No. Private healthcare. Deport illegal immigrants. I don't know if deporting all of them is a financially viable method. But no, if they're not citizens, they shouldn't have this, even if they're paying for taxes. Should Muslim immigrants be banned from entering the country until the government improves? High-risk countries. I think that's a good middle ground. Now, the way Trump managed this was a bit shaky, because not only did he put it through on an executive order, but it wasn't worded clearly enough, and it made a big mess at all the airports. Oops. There. Okay. Federal government required children to be vaccinated. No. If you don't want to get vaccinated, don't get vaccinated. Hold parents criminally liable for transferring deadly diseases to other children. And that sounds like a legal nightmare. Oh my goodness. Just imagine that. Oh, Timmy played with Bobby, and now Bobby is sick. Well, I didn't actually tell Timmy to play with Bobby. Well, it's your fault anyway. You're going to prison. That sounds like a real legal nightmare. Fund public ad campaigns about risks and benefits. No. No. No, the thing is, there are risks to vaccination. There always are. And, for example, mercury content. And there's also the problem that sometimes it really isn't very effective at all. So I think it really should be based on a case-by-case basis, and the parents should make this decision, not some big government bureaucrat. Do you support the use of nuclear stances? Nationalize? I don't want it to be nationalized. I want it to be privatized. How is there a cleaner alternative? Nuclear power is one of the safest power sources there is. 3 Mile Island, nobody died. The Fukushima incident, the only deaths were caused by the flooding rather than by the nuclear problems. It is so safe that the chance of somebody dying is really bad. Now, of course, you might say Chernobyl, but that's really the outlier out of all the nuclear incidents that have occurred. That one is the outlier. So yeah. And I'm not going to subsidize that. They can, if they want that energy, they better sell that energy for profit. I don't want to pay for them to sell me energy. That sounds dumb. Should producers be required to label genetically engineered foods? No. They can do what they want. And I don't really have a specific idea on whether it's good or bad. It's just situational, really, whether it's nutritious or not. Which party do you identify with? Not socialist. Definitely not. Are there other stances on this? Write in. At your stance. Progressive. Definitely not progressive, I'll be honest. Now, one might say, well, isn't progressive, progress? Well, it's progressing towards something, but progress isn't a one-dimensional street. It's not a one-dimensional thing where it's just a line towards progress. It's more two-dimensional, three-dimensional, four-dimensional, where progress can take you in a direction that is debatable. Where some might say that's progress, other people might say that's bad and tyranny. And the Progressive Party in the United States definitely is not something that I associate with. So let's see. Okay. Oh, definitely not transhumanist. Is that even a political party? Transhumanist? Now, the thing is, I'm actually went Republican for the primaries on the election itself, and Constitution for the presidential candidate, but I went for Republican candidates on more local issues, and I also voted for some independent candidates. So I'm sort of on that side of the issues. But should I get more questions? Okay, I think I want more questions. Nah, actually, I don't want more questions. Let's take a look. Okay. Let's take a look. Done. Okay. Donald Trump, Gary Johnson, Darrell Castle. Darrell Castle is the guy I actually voted for. And this, I didn't answer all the possible questions, so I'm pretty sure something would have come up where I heavily disagreed with Trump on. The thing is, I think Trump has a lot of good ideas, but the way he goes about doing them and his attitude, I really don't like. So, Darrell Castle. And Jill Stein, definitely not there. Rocky was on my ballot as well. I didn't vote for him. Gary Johnson, certainly. He made... The problem with Gary Johnson is that because he's against interventionalism in every single form, he's an actual isolationist, not just a non-interventionalist. Or is he? Well, he's at least a strong non-interventionalist. He doesn't even bother learning that much about foreign politics. So when people asked him about Aleppo, he had no clue what that was. So, yeah, Gary Johnson, disappoint. But who I really actually voted for in the primary was Ted Cruz, because, looked like a good guy. And I always do research on all the candidates before I decide who to vote for. Now, Jill Stein, Green Party, I definitely would not have voted for that. Let's be honest. It's not the best for me. Okay. Darrell Castle. Science. Hillary Clinton. Well, it didn't really get into the more controversial science questions. That's actually what I was thinking about answering more questions on. But that didn't happen. Immigration, Darrell Castle. Okay. Gary Johnson on healthcare issues. Yeah, it's a very sort of libertarian thing. Environmental. Trump, Johnson, Castle. Yeah, Jill Stein. Sorry, madam. I really did not want to vote for you. And you know what? I considered Trump and Clinton to be pretty similar on the thing. So right-wing libertarian, that really goes with what I've seen so far, where I'm more for liberty and economic freedom, personal freedom, that kind of stuff, rather than legislating all these things. But I am slightly more moral than I am about some other things. Decentralization, 100 points. Holy cannoli. Wow. And you know what? That's true. Small government, laissez-faire, individualism, capitalism, assimilation, and deregulation. Wow. On point. That's actually... Are there more? Traditional, yeah, I don't want to be progressive, as I talked about earlier. And you know what? Might not be the nicest way to deal with these issues, but yeah. Religious versus secular. Okay. Support for my political beliefs. Let's see. Yeah, big pit parts of Texas. Wisconsin, Michigan. Yeah, boy, those boys. That boy. Come on, let go. There. And compare results with friends. No. So that's sort of my political viewpoint. I might take another test later because this one didn't really take into account all the things and was more about which candidates you would most likely vote for. Yeah. Yeah. Anyway, that's it, I guess. See you all next time. Tell me what you think. Tell me, maybe you took this test. What were your results compared to mine? And thanks for watching. Anawultos, over and out.